Truckers are preparing for a crackdown as police begin moving into downtown Ottawa following Justin Trudeau's invocation of the Emergencies Act. Many of the peaceful protesters have announced their intention to stand their ground, potentially leading to a standoff that could end in violence. Also ahead, another standoff, this time on the other side of the world, as fears continue to be stoked over a potential Russian invasion of Ukraine. It's a tale of two tyrants, friends, and it's time for Hold the Line. Welcome to Hold the Line. I'm Buck Sexton. Tyranny in Canada and the tyrant of Russia possibly invading Ukraine. We have a lot right now on the line in both regions of the world. Now, let's start with Canada, as it's right next door. And what you're seeing is a standoff for freedom. Not just an issue of truckers in one country, in Canada, and the mandates that national government has put in place that never should have been put in place in the first place. Did nothing, by the way, to stop the spread of the virus, have been an abject failure, but there's so much more at stake than even just that. This is about the relationship between a free people and their government. Justin Trudeau may seem to people like a guy who's teaching a gender and studies class at Bryn Mawr, but he's actually a tyrant. He is a socialist, he is a lockdowner and a wacko, and here he is, fortunately, getting heckled as he tries to defend his first ever, in the history of Canada, invocation of the Emergencies Act to crush dissent. Watch.
After discussions with Cabinet and caucus, after consultations with the premiers of all provinces and territories, after conversation with the opposition leaders, we decided to invoke the Emergencies Act to supplement provincial and territorial capacity to address the blockades and occupations. I want to be very clear, Mr. Speaker. The scope of these measures are time-limited and geographically targeted. They are reasonable and proportionate to the threats they are meant to address, and they are fully to be compliant with the Charter of Rights and Freedoms to reassure all Canadians that this is the right thing to move forward.
Yes, shout down this vile tyrant leftist. Don't allow him to spew more of this propaganda without coming up against people that are willing to speak the truth. What's happening right now in Canada is appalling. Everyone can see it, everyone's aware of it, and it's likely to get worse. They keep lying about the protest, about the aims of the truckers. They can't even address this truthfully because more people would say, yeah, that makes sense. Here's an idea, crazy libs of the Trudeau government. Stop the mandates. Go back to normal life. Let everyone live their lives. They could do this tomorrow. What's the point of the mandate right now? What exactly does this do? We're already at the end of the Omicron wave. This is about power. It is about power. It must be on their terms. And if you don't like that, well, they're going to call you a far-right extremist. Here's the Canadian Minister of Public Safety. Watch.
We need to be clear-eyed about the seriousness of these incidents. Indeed, several of the individuals at Coots have strong ties to a far-right extreme organization with leaders who are in Ottawa. We're talking about a group that is organized, agile, knowledgeable, and driven by an extremist ideology where might makes right. At the core of the movement is anger, animosity, and in far too many cases, violence. We're seeing it play at our borders, in front of our legislatures, our national symbols, and in our communities and in our neighborhoods.
Where is this violence they're talking about exactly? Everyone that I know, and I know several people who have gone up to the protests in recent days, says that the jovial atmosphere, people are handing out food, taking care of each other, playing music, playing hockey in the streets. There's no violence. What are they talking about? If one guy involved in a protest with thousands gets into a scuffle with police, we're going to call it a violent protest? Oh, that's quite different from what we saw during the mass riots of the BLM movement, isn't it? But this is about political payback too, friends. The Canadians who are doing this, the ones who are pushing this tyranny, they hate the right in this country as well as their own country, and they made it quite clear. Here is Trudeau's justice minister, the equivalent of their attorney general, saying if you're the member of a pro-Trump movement, The truckers are in Canada. They can't even vote in America. They definitely didn't vote for Trump because they can't vote for president. And Trump is not even in politics right now. But he just says, if you're a member of a pro-Trump movement, you should be worried that we're going to seize your bank accounts. Watch.
Look, you've just compared people who may have donated to this to the same people who are funding maybe a terrorist. I just want to be clear here, sir. This is really important. A lot of folks says, look, I just don't like your vaccine mandates and I donated to this. Now it's illegal. Should I be worried that the bank can freeze my account? What's your answer to that?
Well, I think if you are a member of a pro-Trump movement who's donating hundreds of thousands of dollars and millions of dollars to this kind of thing, then you ought to be worried.
You ought to be worried. The highest law enforcement official in the country of Canada, 40 million people. If you're part of a pro-Trump movement, we're going to seize your bank account? By the way, this is not an idle threat. The Minister of Finance, their Treasury Secretary equivalent, Chrystia Freeland, an idiot journo who somehow is now a member of the Canadian government, says that they have already started to freeze bank accounts of people who have donated to the truckers. They're doing it. Watch.
So you're confirming that accounts have been frozen, both personal and corporate, but you're not releasing the information. And the actual follow-up is, I'm just wondering whether the bank accounts will be targeted of individuals who donated to the Give, Send, Go and the GoFundMe campaigns. Are they considered designated people under the Emergencies Act, meaning that their credit cards could be cut and financial services are targeting them as well?
Okay, so the names of both individuals and entities, as well as crypto wallets, have been shared by the RCMP with financial institutions, and accounts have been frozen, and more accounts will be frozen. Crowdfunding platforms and payment service providers have started the registration process with FinTrack.
They are freezing people's accounts because they don't like their politics. This is happening in Canada. This is tyranny. And if that's not bad enough for you, Ottawa law enforcement is warning that they'll take pets away from protesters. This was in a tweet today. Attention animal owners at demonstrations. If you're unable to care for your animal as a result of enforcement actions, your animal will be placed into protective care for 8 days at your cost. After 8 days, if arrangements are not made, your animal will be considered relinquished. So they're either they're gonna take your dog away from you, basically. This is what they're warning you about if you're at the protest. You got a dog with you, we'll take your dog away. And if you don't get it in time, we might give your dog away or maybe euthanize it. These people are psychopaths. There's something really wrong with them. Okay, these are peaceful protesters and they're right. The Canadian government is in the wrong. So that's one form of tyranny. We've got another one right now, farther away, of course, this one in Russia, where the despot Putin is still possibly going to be invading Ukraine. Here's Biden saying the threat of a Russian invasion. Remember, yesterday it was they're moving troops away from the border, Russian troops away from the Ukrainian border. Now Biden's saying, oh no, it's very high threat of invasion. It could happen the next few days. Watch.
How high is the threat of a Russian invasion right now?
It's very high.
Why?
It's very high because they have not moved any of their troops out. They've moved more troops in. Number one. Number two, we have reason to believe that they are engaged in a false flag operation to have an excuse to go in. Every indication we have is they're prepared to go into Ukraine, attack Ukraine. My sense this will happen within the next several days.
What are the things that will there any?
False flag operation? Gonna go in the next few days? Wait, but yesterday it was, don't worry, looks like they're backing off. Today it's false flag operation, and maybe in a few days the invasion happens. They're also really pushing this false flag notion, which of course the Russians do this kind of thing. It's very possible. Part of the issue here is there's so much conflicting reporting, and it feels kind of like the bozos are in charge in this country right now. I mean, these are unserious people like Joe Biden who are making these kinds of decisions and are involved, at least from the American side, as to how we would react to this and how we try to lead the international community. Here's Secretary of State Blinken saying they're planning a false flag. We're hearing a lot about this. Watch.
Russia plans to manufacture a pretext for its attack. This could be a violent event that Russia will blame on Ukraine, or an outrageous accusation that Russia will level against the Ukrainian government. We don't know exactly the form it will take. It could be a fabricated so-called terrorist bombing inside Russia, the invented discovery of a mass grave, a staged drone strike against civilians, or a fake, even a real attack using chemical weapons. Russian media has already begun to spread some of these false alarms and claims to maximize public outrage, to lay the groundwork for an invented justification for war.
False flag using chemical weapon attacks? Well, yesterday it was, we're moving away, diplomacy seemed to be working. Today it's false flags with chemical weapons. Who knows what tomorrow will bring, but Putin the tyrant's making the calls here, just like Trudeau the tyrant. All right, there's victory in Virginia as Governor Glenn Youngkin signs legislation making masking optional in schools around the Commonwealth. We've got more on that with the CEO of American Majority, Ned Ryun, when we come back. But first, I want to talk to you about protecting the most important asset you own, your home. 100% of the equity in your home can be stolen by cyber criminals. Once it's gone, years of hard work and savings are wiped out in an instant. The FBI calls home title fraud one of the fastest growing crimes, which is why you need to go to HomeTitleLock.com, America's leader in home title protection. Here's the problem. The deed to your home is the only document that proves you own it, and the deeds to all our homes are online now. In minutes, a criminal can forge your name off the deed to your home and refile as the new owner. Like one new homeowner who spent a fortune in legal fees when the thief forged himself onto the deed to his home and took out loans. Look, Home Title Lock protects you from this, gives you peace of mind that the deed to your home is protected. Visit HomeTitleLock.com. Again, that's HomeTitleLock.com. We'll be right back with more. Hold the line. The battle of COVID-19 mandates continues to unfold across the country. The CDC still resisting calls to change its mask guidance as even more and more blue and red states lift all restrictions around masks. What's going on here? Why are they clinging to those damp cloth Fauci worship items? Well, let's ask the CEO of American Majority, Ned Ryun. What's up, my man, Ned?
Hey, Buck. How you doing, man?
I'm good, dude. I feel like things are starting to break in favor of America and freedom right now, though we got a long way to go. Let's start with your home state of Virginia. Classrooms looking a little different this morning after Governor Glenn Youngkin signed a bill outlawing school mask mandates, giving parents the power to have their kids opt out of mask mandates. Here's what he said. Watch this one.
It is a bright, sunny day in Virginia, and we're seeing a big win for parents and for students all over the Commonwealth. And yes, the science and medical opinion from so many folks has changed, but also the politics have changed.
Yes, the politics have changed, including in Virginia.
Yeah, no, that's right, Buck. The amazing part is I think you're going to see, as we've seen in a lot of blue states, mask mandates being dropped because we're shockingly in a midterm year and they realize the politics of these mask mandates, not only for school kids, but for the general public, are a losing proposition. I will say this, it was pretty amazing to be up front and close observer of what was taking place here in Virginia, especially in Loudoun County, that once Youngkin actually put in place his executive order, Loudoun County and Fairfax fought tooth and nail to make sure that they would resist that. And it had to come down to a bill being passed through the State House, State Senate, Youngkin signing with emergency clause. But for us to get the injunction for us to be able to go to school today, it came down to a lawsuit taking place in Loudoun County in which 3 parents had filed an injunction on the mask mandates. And the judge decided at 7 p.m. last night that he was going to actually put an injunction on masks and kids could go back without them today. And the amazing part to me, Buck, was that the Loudoun County public school system lawyers were fighting tooth and nail to prevent that from happening last night. And yet the judge said, this is arbitrary, unusually harsh to suspend kids over masks. 3 of my kids were suspended, had been out of school for the last 10 days doing remote learning. But the best part about that judge's ruling was that they are now required to expunge from every student's records any disciplinary action that might have been taken standing up to those mask mandates.
Ned, good on you, by the way, for standing behind your kids, for standing up for freedom and actually having the courage of your principles. Not a surprise to anybody who knows you, but just wanted to give you a high five on that one. At least half a dozen blue state governors, though, are still defying this trend and the CDC's guidance about lifting mask mandates, although I guess the CDC is kind of still saying there's masks, whatever. The point is, Connecticut, New Jersey, Massachusetts, Delaware, I think Oregon is on the list, Rhode Island, New York. Well, New York has kind of lifted it partially, but New York City is different.
Yeah.
Well, when do you think, I mean, are they just going to ride this thing out until like April or May? What the hell's wrong with these people?
Oh, I think here in Virginia, the school systems, Loudoun County, Fairfax, and others, would have written it out through the end of the school year if they could have gotten that, if Youngkin and the House of Delegates and the state Senate hadn't taken a firm stance and said this isn't happening. So yeah, no, I think if they have the ability to do it, I think a lot of these people are going to try and push it through the end of the school year just because they can. And it's a real shame, Buck. I mean, this is nothing but child abuse in my mind, to force these kids to wear masks 7-8 hours a day, when in fact a lot of the administrators, I have pictures of principals and administrators in some of these schools here in Loudoun County that were not even following the mask mandates, as they're basically enforcing draconian measures against these young kids. So I think if left to their own devices, a lot of these blue states are going to hold out as long as possible just because they can. And I think it's a child abuse and it's a total abuse of power.
It is absolutely abuse of power and child abuse. Couldn't agree more. Have been saying that for a long time. And I know you've been on the front lines of this fight in Virginia. Meanwhile, Dr. Fauci, who I've said now for 2 years is the absolute worst, he's out there still saying that kids should be wearing masks in schools. I want to have you react. Watch this one.
Should children be wearing masks at school?
Well, right now, according to the metrics that the CDC has currently in place, the answer to that is yes. And the CDC does recommend that there's masking in school, given the current dynamics of the outbreak right now.
What do you think?
He's an idiot.
Yep.
There's literally no science or facts. Buck. I mean, there's studies from the University of Waterloo up in Canada that showed last summer that those little stupid cloth masks that everybody has to wear on an airplane are 10% effective. And even if an N95 mask is worn correctly, they're only 50% effective. And nobody wears masks correctly. So no, masks are not the answer to this virus. And the studies and the data have shown that. So Fauci is a buffoon. He's an idiot. I really wish, and I had encouraged Trump 2 years ago, send him back to his office at NIH, shut the door and say, thank you very much for your service. Your services are no longer required. I wish you would have listened.
To be fair, Ned, it's not just Fauci that's clinging to mask fascism as long as he possibly can. There's also the director of the CDC, which I think should be torn down to the studs, and they should build something actually worthwhile in its place. Here is Dr. and Director Walensky. Watch this one.
Will soon put guidance in place that is relevant and encourages prevention measures when they are most needed to protect public health and our hospitals. We want to give people a break from things like mask wearing when these metrics are better. I know that everyone is anxious to move beyond this pandemic, and some of the ways we have had to change the way we live over the last 2 years. We all share the same goal, to get to a point where COVID-19 is no longer disrupting our daily lives.
Mm-hmm.
You know what this has really shown me over the last 2 years? I already knew that. Well, I think it's really demonstrated the world that this whole idea of an administrative state filled with an educated elite is a complete farce. The premise of it that we would have applied science to have progress has really shown that these bureaucrats, it's a credentialed idiocracy that are highly political. I think the shame of this is the CDC, the NIH, have been shown to be not necessarily concerned with science necessarily, but more the politics of what's taking place. I don't view the CDC or the NIH as actually being reliable sources for scientific guidance. And I think it's been good for the American people, I hope, that are paying attention to understand this whole premise of the administrative state and the unelected bureaucrats or the supposed experts is in fact a completely false premise. And we should reject the entire premise of the progressive administrative state and perhaps re-examine a lot of these agencies. And if we take back power in 2024, perhaps we should completely reimagine the CDC and the NIH and the DOJ and the FBI and all these various institutions, reimagine them in such a way in which we completely devolve and maybe even shutter some of them.
A flying elbow to the face of Fauci fascism from Ned Ryun, as always. Good to see you, my friend. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Buck.
A case involving an anti-immigration group that was denied police protection in order to prevent it from holding a conference in Colorado could have major implications for free speech in this country. Senior columnist at Town Hall, Kurt Schlichter, joins to talk about that coming up. But first, let's talk about protecting your online data. A lot of companies promise that your privacy is guaranteed, but we know that's not true. That's why you need a new privacy and cybersecurity application tool called Secure. It's spelled S-E-K-U-R. Secure is using proprietary encryption and is offering secure instant messaging and email. With Secure, all of your communication is based on servers and data centers hosted in Switzerland without any of the big tech platforms that are spying on you all the time, by the way. You got to actually take action today to make sure that you are protected when you're using all comms online. Secure is your solution to stop the constant theft of your digital identity. Costs only $5 for the messenger, only $10 for the messenger and email combination package. Go to secure.com, take back your privacy today. That's SEKUR.com, and use promo code BUCK for 25% off. Kurt Schlichter up next. Stay with us. Is freedom of speech on the chopping block? A few years ago, VDARE, an organization that promotes the idea that U.S. immigration policy should benefit Americans, attempted to sponsor a conference at a Colorado Springs resort. The event was ultimately canceled after the local mayor accused VDARE of engaging in hate speech and announced that the group would not be allowed to access fire or police services during the conference. VDARE sued the mayor, alleging a violation of its First Amendment rights. If this is allowed to stand, it could have a huge implication for the future of free speech. And this comes from our friend Kurt Schlichter at townhall.com, who is also a lawyer, among being a patriot and international man of mystery. Kurt, thanks for being with us, man.
Hey, thanks for having me, Buck. Yeah, this is really ugly. Essentially, what you had is a politician who didn't like the speech of these people. And I don't know who these people are. I just know that some liberal guys saying they're bad people. Let's assume they are bad people. Let's assume they're terrible people. This mayor said, hey, nice hotel you got there. Be a pity if somebody attacked it, because we won't send cops or fire or anyone else to help you. I mean, that's what he said. And he succeeded in getting this place to say, well, gosh, then we're not going to host it. This is outrageous. But what's more outrageous is 2 out of 3 federal court judges said this was not an attack on the civil rights of these VDARE people.
This is stunning. I mean, by the way, the town hall piece referenced here is by Ann Coulter. Quote, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the 10th Circuit, 1 Obama judge and 2 George W. Bush judges, appointees of those presidents, 1 dissent, found for the mayor on the grounds that it's possible the resort canceled, not because the mayor announced there'd be no police or fire protection, but because of Charlottesville, which VDARE had nothing to do with. Again, VDARE is an immigration website, not a street protest immigration organization. I don't even understand. Like, how is that even possible? I mean, you're a lawyer, Kurt. How can the judges? This just seems crazy.
It is crazy, and it's crazy for a couple reasons. The first is procedural. It's called what was there is a motion to dismiss under Rule 12b-6, and 12b-6 says you have to take the complaint, that is what VDARE accused them of, as if it's true, and then you look at it and see if all of that's true, is there a legal remedy? And these 2 judges said, well, the other side could prove something, but that's not the standard, Buck. They can certainly make that defense in court. I certainly would if I was defending them. But the fact is, the court didn't even abide by basic procedural rules in order to bend over backwards to find against what they probably considered were political opponents. And that's unbelievably dangerous. The courts have got to be neutral. Everyone, whether you like them or not like them, have got to be equal before them. VDARE and BLM both have a right to a neutral set of rules neutrally applied. I don't like BLM. I don't know anything about VDARE, so whatever.
I don't either, actually. So I was learning about VDARE in this article, but go ahead.
Yeah, let's assume they're the worst people on earth. Who cares? BLM shouldn't be subjected to this. You know, in a conservative town, a conservative bunch of people shouldn't say, well, you know, if you let BLM hold a rally on your property and a fire breaks out, we won't send the fire department. That'd be scandalous. That'd be outrageous. The difference is, you know, conservatives would be saying that's horrible. You can't do that. I don't like BLM. I don't like Antifa, but they have a right to peacefully protest and to have the same access to government services everyone else does. But apparently that only goes one way, and that's unacceptable and unsustainable.
The city of Colorado Springs put out this statement that the city of Colorado Springs does not have the authority to restrict freedom of speech, nor do direct private businesses as to which events they may host. That said, I would encourage local businesses to be attentive to the types of events they accept and the groups they invite to our great city. We can't restrict your free speech, but if we don't like it, maybe the business is going to have some problems. I mean, it just feels like they're just being disingenuous.
So so the government is now saying you should be attentive to the kind of free speech you exercise. Well, what does that mean? What do you mean by attentive? Does that mean people who go right down the line with your politics? Because that is wrong and unsustainable. I hope the Supreme Court takes this case. And I hope that they smack these people around. One of the most important decisions of the last 50 years was the decisions with the scumbag Illinois Nazis. Everybody hates Illinois Nazis who wanted to march through Skokie, Illinois, and they were allowed to because everybody has a right to protest. Now, if you want to go out there and go, "Hey, you Nazi idiots! You're scumbags, you're losers, you're probably sexually dysfunctional." That's that's perfectly legit. But everyone has the right to free speech. Everyone has the right to peacefully protest. And that also goes for people you and I don't like. If you want to have a BLM rally that doesn't involve burning, looting, or murder, you are free to do so, and it's incumbent upon us as conservatives to protect your right to do so. Sadly, it appears that only conservatives are interested in that anymore. I would think the ACLU should be all over this, but it's probably busy suing to enforce trans insanity and mask mandates.
I gotta ask you, Kurt, just to switch gears for a second here. What's going on in Canada right now? We talked about it at the top of the show. The seizure of bank accounts without even a court order, and the explicit anti-Trumpism coming from the Minister of Justice, their equivalent of the Attorney General. To me, this is like hair on fire, tyranny, craziness.
It is.
I'm like, how can anyone say that Canada is still a free society? I mean, this is crazy.
Canada's not a free society. Free societies don't say that if you're going to engage in protest without any kind of process, we're just going to instruct companies, like happened in Colorado Springs, to go do our dirty work for us. Now, corporatism is, fascism is socialism plus corporations. They try and hide it, and there are always stupid conservatives out there, Buck, who go, "Well, it's a private company." No. Private companies cannot act as cat's paws for the government to destroy our civil rights. Here is the conservative principle that we need to operate on. We will not have any principles that make us less free. There is no way you can principle me into serfdom. And that's what that's what a lot of weak hearts on our side want to do. I'm
not sure you're a crypto guy or not, Kurt. I don't know.
I am not.
But did you see that now the DOJ in this country, right when crypto became something that might get around some of the Canadian finance restrictions for the truckers, FBI has announced they've got a special crypto enforcement unit going into effect now under the Biden regime. What do you think about that?
Well, I think that whoever is president in 2024, because it's going to be a Republican, needs to be woke to this and start firing people at the DOJ. Luckily, we have a Supreme Court, if not the district and all those districts and circuit courts, that does not that may well stand up for Americans' rights. Look, the fact is that the establishment has decided that since it can't enforce power by threats, what it wants to do is use corporations to effectively take people out of the economic system should they dare to dissent, and that is intolerable. We need to understand that this is a new threat, and we need to adapt our conservative principles to match it. William F. Buckley said it really well. He says, "I don't care." To be I'm paraphrasing. I don't care to be a serf of the government or General Motors. It's irrelevant to me who's taking my freedom. I don't want my freedom taken, and that's the way conservatives need to approach this.
Kurt, see you at CPAC, my man. Thanks for hanging out with us today.
Can't wait, man. See you there.
An FDA executive was secretly recorded by a Project Veritas journalist, and what he said about the future of vaccines and mandates is something you need to hear. We'll talk to the host of Counterculture on the Epoch Times, Daniel D'Souza Gill, coming up. Earlier this month, an FDA executive spilled the beans in front of a Project Veritas hidden camera, admitting President Biden will force an annual COVID-19 shot that would be a recurring fountain of revenue for drug firms. Here's a little more of what FDA official Christopher Cole had to say.
Biden wants to inoculate as many people as possible. So you have to get an annual shot. I mean, it hasn't been formally announced yet. They don't want to rile everyone up. The drug companies, the food companies, the vaccine companies, they pay us hundreds of millions of dollars a year to hire and keep the reviewers to approve their products. If they can get every person required at an annual vaccine, that is a recurring return of money going into their company.
So how do you know it's already getting approved?
Well, they're not going to, just from everything I've heard, they're not going to not approve it.
They're not going to not approve it, just from everything I've heard. Yeah, to these people, your health and your safety is a big way to make cash, isn't it? Joining me now, the host of Counterculture on the Epoch Times, Danielle D'Souza Gill. Danielle, so good to see you.
Thank you so much.
When there are companies that are making tens of billions of dollars actually in revenue for a product that the American people are forced by the state to take, and that they're also completely immune from lawsuit from, in terms of the companies, they can't be sued for this stuff. I feel like people should ask some questions. Maybe the media, maybe somebody should ask some questions.
Absolutely. And they don't even want to be held to their own standard. I think the key of something that he said there was recurring. So he knows the fact that, a one-time vaccine or one-time thing like that, that's not going to give the company enough money long term. So the fact that it's recurring, the fact that they want those mandates to continue so that they say, oh, no, you have to keep coming back for more shots, that's what continues to allow them to have an ongoing stream of money. And I think we also see the fact that he couldn't even stand by his statements. We have this video recording of him, but later he claims, oh, well, that wasn't really true. But then he actually says, oh, well, everything I said was true. And so they actually can't defend anything they say, and they just prefer to prevent the rest of us from actually discussing it.
Project Veritas obviously had this guy on camera. In the aftermath of this, there was a follow-up interview in which Cole said he had been tricked during a hack job investigation, that his comments were taken out of context. He said his office was not involved in the approval of vaccines. It does seem amazing, Danielle, how people are terrified of being on the wrong side of the vaccine police in any capacity here.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, I don't think he's even clear about explaining his own job, because he also said in his explanation to James O'Keefe that he was in charge of this emergency use. So I'm not even sure if he knows exactly how to explain it, because I think he's trying to defend himself, but at the same time, he is an FDA executive. But I think also the fact that he talked about that this is an emergency use vaccine means that they don't have to follow the same type of protocol as usual, especially for children, is really troubling.
They're acting like these days, the Democrats are obviously in some states moving away from some of the mask mandates, and it feels like there's a thaw at least going on right now. And of course, the temperature is warming up, but they're not done with us. Dr. Fauci is still very much out there demanding masking in schools continue. And he's reminding folks that, there's probably going to have to be a fourth shot for people. Watch this one.
The potential future requirement for an additional boost or a fourth shot for mRNA or a third shot for J&J is being very carefully monitored in real time, and recommendations, if needed, will be updated according to the data as it evolves.
I mean, this guy's, he's not going to stop. So everyone needs to understand, he's never going to let this go. Until Republicans take power, then all of a sudden I feel like he's probably going to resign.
I think he's having the time of his life. He loves the media. He loves doing interviews. He loves being in front of the camera all day. So I don't know where he finds time to actually work on anything. But I think that when it comes to all of this, we see that the Democrats are so afraid of the midterms. I mean, we've seen so many of them already announcing they're not running again, because I think they know that they just don't have good chances in this fall. But yet at the same time, I think that they want to continue these really harsh mandates. They want to keep up masks. So I think they might lift some of these leading up to the midterms in order to get some votes, but then they're just going to go right back to them because of the money machine that we talked about.
By the way, Fauci is continuing with this stuff, also Walensky and others. It's just remarkable, Danielle, to see that finally you're having people in the media writing these articles like, maybe we should have asked some questions about this a while ago. It's like, welcome to the party, pal. But I want to change gears here for a second. An Ottawa cafe owner was doxxed for donating $250 to truckers in Canada. Tammy Giuliani donated $250 to the Freedom Convoy via the fundraising platform Give, Send, Go. After the site suffered it's not a data breach, it was a hacking actually. Giuliani's contribution was made public and her restaurant began to receive phone calls threatening vandalism and violence. This is crazy.
It really is. It's horrifying because I think the left, they used to have that slogan, coexist. They used to act like, oh, we just want to coexist with everyone. You just need to include everyone, all groups. But that's not really what they're about. And obviously, they are more focused on stamping out anyone who disagrees with them, anyone who supports a cause different from them, even to the point where they're willing to, intimidate them with physical threats and things of that nature. So they have really just departed so much from their whole, idea of tolerance. They actually just want to make it so that they don't change your mind on anything. They just force you into compliance or really just intimidate you.
It's just stunning, Danielle, to watch how in this country our press pretends that they are the voice of the working class, the voice of those who need someone to speak truth to power. And they say nothing as Canada is seizing the bank accounts of people who donate to this protest. That's already been established today. And as the Canadian and American media engage in a kind of shaming campaign, it's actually so egregious. The Washington Post emailed somebody who donated $40 saying, do you want to comment on this? Because your name is out there, which is clearly meant to intimidate and terrify people. Even, get this, Danielle, Ilhan Omar of the Squad. I know. She actually went against the mainstream media here and tweeted out, I failed to see why any journalist felt the need to report on a shop owner making such an insignificant donation rather than get them harassed. It's unconscionable and journalists need to do better. P.S. I fully read the article multiple times and still don't believe there was merit to the story. You all are entitled to your opinions. My opinion remains the same. Wow, she doubled down on it. Look, I always say conservatives credit where it's due on issues where it's due.
Yeah, that's great. Maybe she can convince some of her other Squad friends to think similarly. But I think that, the left, whenever they look at people like these truckers, they are very similar in a way to Trump supporters. That's exactly how they spoke about Trump supporters, working class people who want to stand up for beliefs that are obviously against what the radical left wants to do. But whenever it comes to those people, the left usually diminishes them and acts like they're not real people, acts like they're dumb, they're racist, all these things. And of course, we have not seen that at all. So I hope that more of them actually follow along with what Ilhan Omar is saying. I think that that's great that she stood up to that, but I think she is one, unfortunately, on her own in that situation.
Danielle, always appreciate the perspective. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
The View's Joy Behar says she will wear a mask indefinitely in public places. No surprise. Yeah, we'll bring you that story coming up and more in Quick Hits. Security guards at a mall kick out a guy for wearing a Trump mask, and supposed nice guy, good old Amtrak Joe Biden, tells a cringeworthy story about how he once left a dead dog on a woman's doorstep. Let's get into these stories in Quick Hits right now. First of all, the media has been lying to you about a lot of things for a long time, as you know. I can't tell you all of them because I'd be here forever, because they constantly lie. But there's also narrative lies, or rather analytic untruths that they'll put out there, of observations that are supposedly based on consensus that are really just a form of propaganda on their own. And one of them is that Joe Biden is such a good salt of the earth guy. Good old Joe, he'd sit at your table and be a buddy to you. And they say this especially after he says something really stupid and makes a buffoon of himself. They say, oh, that's just Joe being Joe. Well, what does Joe being Joe really mean? Here he is telling a story, which people seem to think is funny, about putting a dead dog. I love dogs. I'm sure a lot of you watching this love dogs too. I don't think this is funny at all. Listen to what he says.
I got a call one night. A woman said to me, obviously not of the same persuasion as I was politically, called me and said, there's a dead dog on my lawn. And I said, yes, ma'am. I said, have you called the county? He said, yes, they're not here. And I said, well, I'll get him in the morning. She said, I want it removed now. I pay your salary. So I went over. I picked it up. She said, I want it out of my front yard. I put it on her doorstep.
Put it on her doorstep. First of all, I think he's lying. And second of all, it's like not funny at all. Dead dog. Yeah, I mean, show a little respect. It's gross. It's weird. But, you know, Joe Biden he's a fraud and a bully, and he's vindictive. That's who he actually is. Don't listen to what the media... Oh, good old Grandpa Joe. Bull crap. Joy Behar, a useful idiot for the right in so many ways, because she will elucidate the views. Can she spell elucidate? That'd be a fun question. Elucidate the views of people who think they understand something about politics because they watch The View, but they actually know nothing. Here she is, not a surprise, saying that, you know, she's going to wear a mask forever. Watch.
Personally, I listen to the little voice in my head that doesn't really follow 100% what they tell me because they keep changing it.
Yeah.
Right. So, like, very short time ago, they were saying put the N95 masks on and now they make sure it's on. And now they're saying you don't have to wear them anymore. Yeah. So if I go on the subway, if I go in a bus, if I go into the theater, if I go into, where else would I go?
A crowded spot.
A crowded place. I would wear a mask. And I might do that indefinitely.
I might do that indefinitely. What a loon. But we've been telling you, this is where it's all going. This is where it's heading. They're going to do this stuff forever. They're going to wear masks forever. They believe that somehow this makes them good people. Why? Masks have not worked. It has been 2 years. They do not slow the spread. There's no good data to support this. I'm sorry, libs. You were wrong. And all those Trumpers that you think are so dumb compared to you, they were right. But, you know, Joy Behar doesn't care because, I mean, come on. Joy Behar, give me a break. Does anyone think that she knows anything about anything? This was remarkable. I mean, I wish we had more of the backstory on this because it's hard to believe in some ways, but apparently it happened. A guy was kicked out of a mall because he was wearing a mask that had the word Trump written on it. Watch.
Can I get a reaction? I shouldn't be shocked that I've had a reaction. Right.
No, it's just I've had this message for a week now. I'm coming here almost every day. First time somebody said something.
People that are walking through the mall every day that are wearing things that are provocative. Okay? And then they appear, you have to turn that off or you're out of here.
Why is he getting kicked out for a Trump mask?
It's private property.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
No, it's not.
Oh, because you're 17 and you understand.
I'm not 17, I'm 21.
Turn off or leave.
Or leave? 7109 Cops Way.
Cops coming.
Ooh, I'm so scared.
Oh, ooh.
I mean, was it really over the Trump mask? It's like hard to believe anyone's that stupid and crazy, but, you know, these days, libs, they're all over the place. Speaking of crazy libs, climate change, which is a religious belief where people who pose as scientists but are really just priests of a pseudo-religion lecture us all about how they can control every aspect of our lives, kind of like what Fauci did with COVID. Here's a climate alarmist, Andrew Dessler, telling Joe Rogan he won't even debate people, no surprise, on the science because, you know, he would lose. Watch.
My feeling is that I won't debate the science. So the science is set, you know, Earth, you know, we're temperature's warming, humans are the cause. I'm happy to debate policy because I think policy needs to be debated. So if someone wants to debate energy policy with me,
why wouldn't you debate the science?
Because the science has already been debated in the scientific system.
I understand that, but to the average person that gets confused and doesn't know whether or not you're correct or Steve Koonin is correct.
Yeah, so I think
a debate would be very beneficial.
You know, I disagree with that entirely because
how so?
Because in a one-on-one debate, without the ability to fact check people, so let's
why
say,
couldn't you fact check them in real life?
In real time,
Yeah,
because I mean,
time.
how do I do that? He says this paper says this, and I'm saying, do you want me to read the paper?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it would be a debate that would take a week.
No debate. Just shut up and do what we tell you. That worked out so well with COVID, didn't it? And masks. And the super effective vaccines that stop the spread so well. Yeah, just listen to the scientists, the experts. They're so smart. Funny, isn't it? They never learn. They never want to learn. That's it for tonight's Hold the Line. The No Spin News with Bill O'Reilly is next. Shields high.